How did a normal school pickup turn into a legal fight over my own child? What started as my son whispering that a man from the gym wasn't a teacher ended with lawyers, DNA results, and a courtroom decision that shocked everyone. I stayed calm, followed the rules, and let the system decide who my son really belonged to. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? I got to the school 20 minutes early that Tuesday. Traffic had been lighter than usual, and I had nowhere else to be. The pickup zone was nearly empty, except for a few other early parents scrolling through their phones in parked cars. I pulled into my usual spot near the flagpole and turned off the engine. The afternoon sun sat low behind the building, casting long shadows across the blacktop. I watched a teacher prop open the main doors with a rubber wedge. Kids would start pouring out in 15 minutes, backpacks bouncing, voices echoing off the brick walls. I used to hate waiting. Clara always said I had no patience for stillness. But after she passed, I found myself arriving earlier and earlier. It gave me time to think, time to prepare for whatever mood Nate might be in when he came through those doors. Some days he ran to the car with a drawing he made in art class. Other days he walked slowly, eyes on the pavement, and I knew he had been thinking about his mother again. 8 years old was too young to lose a parent. I tried to fill the gaps, but some spaces only a mother could occupy. The first wave of kids appeared, kindergartners mostly, clutching oversized folders and juice-stained papers. Their parents waved from open car windows. I scanned the crowd for Nate's classroom. Third grade always came out a few minutes later. Then I saw him. Nate emerged from the side door, not the main entrance. He was alone. His backpack hung from one shoulder, and he clutched his jacket against his chest instead of wearing it. His eyes swept the parking lot until they found me. He walked faster than usual. Not running, but not his normal pace either. I leaned over and pushed open the passenger door. He climbed in without a word and pulled the door shut harder than necessary. The sound echoed in the quiet cabin. "Hey, buddy," I said. "How was your day?" He did not answer right away. He stared straight ahead through the windshield, his small hands gripping the jacket in his lap. His knuckles were pale. "Nate?" He turned his head slightly, not quite looking at me. His voice came out low and uncertain. "Dad, that man over there." I followed his gaze. A man stood near the entrance to the gym annex about 40 yards away. Tall, athletic build, wearing a navy tracksuit and white sneakers. He was talking to another parent, gesturing casually with one hand. "What about him?" I asked. "He's not a teacher," Nate whispered. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "He told some kids he's a teacher, but he's not." The man laughed at something the other parent said. His posture was relaxed, confident. He looked like he belonged there. "How do you know?" I asked. Nate's voice dropped even lower. "I see him at the gym, the one we go to on Saturdays. He works there." I felt something tighten in my chest. Not panic, not yet. Just a faint pressure, like the air had changed. "Are you sure it's the same guy?" Nate nodded. "I'm sure." I watched the man for another moment. He clapped the other parent on the shoulder and turned toward the gym entrance. He pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked the door with practiced ease, then he disappeared inside. "Okay," I said quietly. "Get your seatbelt on." Nate obeyed without question. I heard the click of the buckle. My hands rested on the steering wheel, but I did not start the engine. "Dad?" "Give me a second." I kept my eyes on the gym entrance. The door had closed behind the man, but I could see movement through the narrow windows. Lights came on inside. Shapes moved across the glass. "Are we going home?" Nate asked. I thought about it. I thought about starting the car, pulling out of the lot and driving the 5 miles back to our house. I thought about making dinner, helping with homework, and pretending everything was normal. But something in Nate's voice had been wrong, not just confused, afraid. "Not yet," I said. I unbuckled my seatbelt and opened the door. "Stay here. Lock the doors. I'll be right back." "Where are you going?" "I just need to check something." I closed the door and waited until I heard the locks engage. Nate watched me through the window, his face small and pale. I gave him a nod I hoped looked reassuring, then turned and walked toward the gym. The parking lot was mostly empty now. The last few parents were driving away with their kids. A teacher stood near the main entrance, chatting with a custodian. Neither of them looked my way. I reached the gym door and tested the handle. Locked. I peered through the narrow window beside it. Inside, the man was talking to a group of kids. Maybe 5 or 6 of them, all middle school age. They wore athletic clothes and carried gym bags. The man smiled and gestured toward the basketball courts. One of the kids laughed. Another nodded eagerly. He looked like a coach. He acted like a coach, but Nate said he was not a teacher. I stepped back from the door and pulled out my phone. I opened the school's website and navigated to the staff directory. I scrolled through the names and photos. Teachers, administrators, support staff, coaches. I did not see his face. I tried the athletics page next. Photos of the volleyball team, the track team, the basketball squad. Coaches listed by name beneath each photo. None of them matched the man inside. I stood there for a long moment, phone in hand, staring at the gym door. Then I turned and walked back to the car. Nate unlocked the doors as soon as he saw me coming. I climbed in and pulled the door shut. He looked at me expectantly. "Did you talk to him?" "No," I said. "Why not?" I started the engine. "Because I want to know who he is first." I pulled out of the parking lot slowly, checking the rearview mirror. The gym door remained closed. No one followed us. Nate was quiet on the drive home. He stared out the window, his jacket still bunched in his lap. I did not press him for details. If something was wrong, I needed to approach it carefully, calmly. We pulled into the driveway 15 minutes later. I parked in the garage and shut off the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy. "Nate," I said, "if that man ever tries to talk to you, I want you to tell me right away, okay?" He nodded. "And if you see him at school again, stay away from him." "Okay." We went inside. I set my keys on the counter as Nate dropped his backpack by the stairs and went straight to his room. I didn't stop him. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Clara used to fill it with music, laughter, and the smell of baking. Now it only echoed. I opened the fridge, barely seeing what was inside. My thoughts were on the man in the gym, on Nate's fear, on how easily that man had unlocked the door. I went to my small office, opened my laptop, and searched the neighborhood gym. On the staff page, I found him almost immediately. Porter Findler, personal trainer, group fitness instructor, same face, same confident smile. His bio listed certifications and 5 years at the gym. Nothing about teaching, nothing about schools. I leaned back, staring at the screen. Why would a gym trainer have a key to an elementary school? Why would he call himself a teacher? And why was Nate so afraid? I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. Something was wrong. I didn't know what yet, but I was going to find out. I went back to the school the next day, not to pick up Nate, not to talk to anyone, just to watch. This time I parked across the street, far enough not to draw attention, but close enough to see the gym entrance clearly. I arrived at 2:30, half an hour before dismissal. The lot was quiet, just a few staff cars and a delivery truck idling near the loading dock. I waited. At 3 o'clock, kids started pouring out. Backpacks, laughter, parents honking. I watched it with half my attention. The other half stayed fixed on the gym door. Porter Findler appeared at 3:15. Same tracksuit, same easy stride. He nodded to a teacher by the entrance. She smiled and laughed at something he said. Then he unlocked the gym and walked inside like he belonged there. I waited 5 minutes before getting out of the car. I crossed the street at a casual pace. A few parents glanced at me, but no one cared. I was just another dad. Through the gym window, I saw Porter with a group of older kids, 6th or 7th graders. He held a clipboard and pointed at the wall. One of the kids grabbed a rack of basketballs. I walked around to the side of the building and tried a rear entrance near the locker rooms. Locked. I found a high window and stood on the concrete ledge to see inside. Porter was running drills, free throws, corrections, encouragement. He moved easily between the kids, clapping when someone made a shot. He looked like a coach. A good one. But he wasn't listed on the school staff page, and Nate knew him from the gym. Back in my car, I searched his name with the school district. Nothing. I searched the gym. Good reviews, friendly staff. One mentioned Porter by name. Social media showed charity runs and youth tournaments. One photo had him with middle schoolers. Great day coaching these future stars. Coaching, not teaching. An old local article explained it. Porter volunteered as an assistant coach for a district-affiliated youth league run through gyms and community centers. Background checks required, clearance granted. That explained how he had access. It didn't explain why Nate was afraid. I started the engine and drove toward the after-school program, my thoughts circling the same question. Officially, nothing was wrong, but something still didn't feel right. I picked up Nate at 4 o'clock. He climbed into the car quietly and buckled his seatbelt without being reminded. He looked tired. "How was your day?" I asked. "Fine." "Anything interesting happen?" He shook his head. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. His eyes were on his hands, fingers picking at a loose thread on his backpack strap. "Did you see that man again?" I asked carefully. Nate tensed. Just slightly, but I noticed. "No," he said. I did not push. Not yet. We drove home in silence. I made spaghetti for dinner. Nate ate half his plate and asked to be excused. I let him go. He went upstairs and closed his door. I stayed at the kitchen table, staring at my own half-finished meal. The house felt too quiet again, too empty. I thought about Clara, about the last year of her life, the hospital visits, the chemo, the long nights when she could not sleep, and I sat beside her bed holding her hand, pretending I was not terrified. She had been sick for 14 months. The doctors caught the cancer late. By the time they started treatment, it had already spread. We fought it anyway. We tried everything, clinical trials, experimental approaches, prayer. None of it worked. She faded slowly. Week by week, her strength drained away. By the end, she could barely lift her head. But she still smiled when Nate came into the room. She still held his hand and told him she loved him. She never told me she was scared, not once. But I saw it in her eyes. I finished my dinner and washed the dishes. Then I went to my office and opened the filing cabinet. I kept all of Clara's medical records in the bottom drawer. Insurance forms, treatment schedules, prescriptions. I had not looked at them in over a year. There was no reason to. She was gone. The bills were paid. The chapter was closed. But now I pulled out the folder and spread the papers across my desk. I found her treatment calendar first, a grid of dates and appointments, chemo sessions marked in red, doctor visits in blue, hospital stays in green. I flipped back to the beginning. The first diagnosis came in April, 2 years ago. The first treatment started in May. I counted backward from Nate's birthday. He turned 8 in January. That meant he was conceived in April. April. The same month Clara got her diagnosis. I stared at the calendar. My chest felt tight again. That same pressure, like the air had shifted. Clara had been exhausted that spring, weak, nauseous. We thought it was stress. She had been working long hours at the nonprofit she managed. I had been traveling for work. We were both stretched thin. Physical closeness had been rare. We had tried a few times, but Clara was too tired, too sick. She apologized. I told her it was fine. I meant it. But if Nate was conceived in April? I flipped through more papers. I found a lab report from early May. Routine tests before starting chemo, hormone levels, vitamin counts, everything normal except the cancer markers. And then I found something else, a printout of an email, not from the hospital, from Clara's personal account. It was addressed to someone named P. The subject line was blank. The message was only 2 lines long. I can't do this. Please don't contact me again. There was no reply, no context. Just those 2 sentences. I checked the date, late April, 2 weeks before her first chemo session. I sat back in my chair and stared at the printout. Who was P? Why had Clara saved this? And why had she never sent it? I folded the paper carefully and slid it into my pocket. Then I put the rest of the records back in the drawer and closed it. I walked upstairs and stood outside Nate's room. The light was off under the door. I pressed my ear against the wood and listened. I could hear his breathing, slow and steady. He was asleep. I went to my own room and lay down on top of the covers. I did not turn on the light. I just stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Porter Findler. P? It could have been anyone. A friend, a co-worker, someone from Clara's past. But the timing was too close, and Nate's fear was too real. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but all I could see was that email, those 2 lines, that unsent message. I can't do this. Please don't contact me again. What couldn't she do? And who was she trying to stop? I spent the next morning in my office, door closed, phone on silent. The logistics reports I was supposed to review sat untouched on my desk. I could not focus on freight schedules and delivery routes. Not now. I had taken the printout from the filing cabinet and laid it flat on the desk in front of me. 2 sentences, no signature, no reply. I can't do this. Please don't contact me again. Clara had written those words. She had addressed them to P, and then she had saved the draft without sending it. Why? I opened my laptop and logged into Clara's email account. I still had her password. I had never changed it, never removed the account. Some part of me had not been ready to let go of that last connection. The inbox was frozen in time. The last message was from 2 years ago, a week before she passed, a reminder from the pharmacy about a prescription refill. I scrolled down, scanning the subject lines. Hospital correspondence, bills, messages from friends checking in. I searched for the letter P. A dozen results came back. Most were from people with last names starting with P. A few were automated messages from companies. Nothing stood out. I tried Porter next, no results. I searched gym. One result. A promotional email from the neighborhood gym. Clara had signed up for a membership 3 years ago. She had gone regularly for a few months, then stopped when she got sick. 3 years ago. I leaned back and rubbed my eyes. I was grasping at shadows, making connections that might not exist. But the fear in Nate's voice had been real, and the timing was too close to ignore. I closed the laptop and picked up my phone. I pulled up the gym's website again and found their contact page. There was a number for the front desk. I called it. A woman answered on the third ring. Young voice, cheerful. Peak Fitness, this is Jenna. How can I help you? Hi, I said. I'm calling about one of your trainers. Porter Finler. Oh, sure. Porter's great. Are you looking to book a session? No, I just wanted to confirm something. Does he work with kids? There was a pause. Yeah. He runs a youth fitness program on weekends. It's really popular. And does he work at any schools? Another pause, longer this time. I'm not sure. You'd have to ask him directly. Do you want me to transfer you to his extension? No, that's okay, thank you. I hung up. Youth fitness program. Weekends. That was how Nate knew him. We had been going to the gym on Saturdays for the past 6 months. I had signed Nate up for a beginner sports class. I had never paid attention to the instructors. I dropped him off and went to the weight room, picked him up an hour later. Porter could have been running that class. Nate would have seen him, recognized him, but that still did not explain the school, or the key, or the fear. I stood up and walked to the window. The backyard was quiet. The grass needed mowing, the fence needed painting. Small tasks I had been putting off. Clara used to handle those things. Now they piled up, waiting for me to notice. I thought about calling the school, asking directly about Porter. But what would I say? My son saw a gym trainer with a key to your building? They would tell me he was a volunteer, that he had been cleared, that there was nothing to worry about, and maybe they were right. Maybe I was overreacting. But I could not shake the image of Nate's face, the way he had clutched his jacket, the way his voice had dropped to a whisper. He's not a teacher. I pulled the printout from my pocket and read it again. I can't do this. Please don't contact me again. What if P stood for Porter? What if Clara had known him? What if... I stopped myself. I was spiraling, building a story from fragments and assumptions. I needed evidence, not theories. I went back to my desk and opened the filing cabinet again. This time I pulled out everything. Medical records, bills, old calendars. I spread it all across the desk and started sorting. I found Clara's planner from 3 years ago. She had been meticulous about tracking her schedule, work meetings, doctor appointments, Nate's school events. Everything was written in her neat handwriting. I flipped to April, the month Nate was conceived. The first 2 weeks were full, meetings, conference calls, a charity event. Then the entries became sparse, a few doctor visits, one note that said, tired, with a question mark. And then, near the end of the month, a single entry I had not noticed before. Gym, 6 p.m. No details, just those 2 words. I flipped through the rest of the calendar. Clara had written similar notes throughout the previous months. Gym, 6 p.m. or gym morning. Regular entries, her routine. But after that April entry, the notes stopped. No more gym visits, no more fitness plans. Because she got sick. Because the cancer diagnosis came a week later, and everything changed. I closed the planner and set it aside. My hands were shaking slightly. I pressed them flat against the desk. It was possible. It was all possible. Clara had gone to the gym regularly. Porter worked there. They could have met, talked, maybe more. She got pregnant. She got sick. She stopped going. And then she tried to write that email, to tell him to stop contacting her. But she never sent it. Why? Because she did not want me to know? Because she was scared? Because she thought it would go away if she ignored it? I stood up and paced the small office. My mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. If Porter was Nate's biological father... No, I stopped the thought. Nate was my son. I had raised him. I had been there for every moment. First steps, first words, first day of school. I had held him when he cried. I had stayed up with him when he was sick. I had taught him to ride a bike, to tie his shoes, to say please and thank you. Biology did not matter. Nate was mine. But if Porter knew, if he thought he had a claim, if he wanted custody... I sat back down and put my head in my hands. This was not real. It could not be real. I was making connections that did not exist. I was letting fear turn possibilities into facts. But Nate had been afraid, and that was real. I needed to know the truth. Not guesses, not theories, the truth. I picked up my phone and searched for family law attorneys in the area. I found one with good reviews and a focus on custody cases. Arthur Keene? I called and made an appointment for the next day. Then I went upstairs and checked on Nate. He was in his room, building something with blocks. He looked up when I opened the door. "Hey, Dad. Hey, buddy. You okay?" He nodded. "I'm building a castle." "Looks good." I stood there for a moment, watching him. He looked so small, so fragile, and yet so strong. He had survived losing his mother. He had adapted to a life without her. He had learned to be brave even when he was scared. I would not let anyone take that from him. I would not let anyone take him from me. "I love you, Nate," I said. He smiled. "I love you too, Dad." I closed the door and went back downstairs. I returned to my office and looked at the papers spread across my desk. Evidence, timelines, calendars, fragments of a story I did not want to believe, but I could not ignore it. Not anymore. I started organizing everything into folders. Medical records in one, Clara's planner in another, the printout in a third. If Porter wanted to claim Nate, he would need proof, and so would I. I was going to be ready. I saw Porter again on Friday afternoon. This time I was not hiding. I walked straight to the gym entrance and knocked on the door. He opened it himself. Up close, he was taller than I had realized. Maybe 6'2", broad shoulders, the kind of build that came from years of serious training. He looked at me with mild curiosity. "Can I help you?" "My name is Brent Varon," I said. "We need to talk." His expression did not change. About my son, Nate." Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Maybe surprise. But he recovered quickly. "I'm in the middle of a session," he said. "Can this wait?" "No." He glanced back into the gym. I could hear kids laughing, a basketball bouncing. He stepped outside and pulled the door closed behind him. "All right. What's this about?" I kept my voice calm, level. "You've been spending time around my son's school. You have a key to the gym. You're not listed as staff." "I volunteer," he said. "I coach a youth basketball program. The school knows about it." "Does the school know you're telling kids you're a teacher?" His jaw tightened. "I never said I was a teacher." "My son heard you." "Your son is 8. Kids misunderstand things." I took a step closer. "Why are you at an elementary school when you coach middle schoolers?" Porter crossed his arms. "The gym is shared. I use it for practice. Everything I do is above board. I have clearances, background checks. I plan to verify that." We stared at each other for a long moment. The air between us felt heavy. Then Porter's expression softened slightly. He glanced away, toward the parking lot, then back at me. "Look," he said quietly. "I didn't want it to happen like this." My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" "Nate," he said. "He's my son." The words hung in the air. I heard them, I understood them, but they felt distant, like they were meant for someone else. "No," I said. "He's not." Porter's face was calm, too calm. "Clara told me, 3 years ago, before she got sick." I felt my hands curl into fists. I forced them to relax. "You're lying." "I'm not. We had been seeing each other, not for long, a few months. She got pregnant and she told me. Then she got her diagnosis and everything changed. She asked me to stay away." "And you did." "I did, for a while. But I never stopped thinking about him. I deserve to know my son." I stepped back. I needed distance. "You don't have any right to him." "I have every right," Porter said. His voice was still calm, but there was an edge to it now. "He's mine biologically. I can prove it." "Prove it how?" "DNA test. I'll file for one if I have to." I stared at him. This man I had never met. This stranger who claimed a piece of my life. "You stay away from him," I said. "You stay away from his school. You stay away from us." Porter shook his head slowly. "I can't do that. Not anymore. Nate deserves to know who I am, and I deserve to be his father." "You're not his father," I said. "I am." "You raised him. I respect that. But biology matters, and the law will agree." I wanted to strike him, but I did not, because that would not help Nate. "You're making a mistake," I said. "No, I'm correcting one." He turned and opened the gym door. "You should get a lawyer, Brent, because I already have one." He stepped inside and closed the door. I heard the lock click. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, my heart pounding. Then I walked back to my car and drove home. Nate was at a friend's house for the afternoon. I had the house to myself. I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hands were shaking. Porter's words echoed in my mind. He's my son. Clara told me. I deserve to be his father. I set the glass down and gripped the edge of the counter. I wanted to scream, but I just stood there, breathing, forcing myself to stay calm. Nate was my son. I had raised him. I had loved him. I had been there for every moment of his life, but the law might not see it that way. I pulled out my phone and called Arthur Keene. He answered on the second ring. Arthur Keene. Mr. Keene, this is Brent Varon. We have an appointment on Monday. Yes. What can I do for you? I need to move it up. Today, if possible. There was a pause. Can I ask what this is regarding? Custody. Someone is threatening to take my son. Another pause. All right. I can see you at 5. My office is on Main Street, 2nd floor. I'll be there. I hung up and spent the next 2 hours organizing every piece of evidence I had. Medical records, calendars, the printout, photos of Nate and me together, school records. At 4:30, I drove to the attorney's office. The building was old brick, sandwiched between a coffee shop and a bookstore. I climbed the stairs and found his name on a frosted glass door. Arthur Keene was late 50s, gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses. He shook my hand firmly and sat down across from me. Tell me what's going on, he said. I told him everything. The school, the gym, Porter's claim, Clara's planner, the unsent email, Porter's threat to file for custody. Arthur listened without interrupting. When I finished, he set down his pen and leaned back. This is complicated, he said, but not impossible. Can he take Nate from me? He can file for a paternity test. If the results show he's the biological father, he can petition for parental rights. That doesn't mean he'll get custody, but he could get visitation. Or shared custody. My stomach turned. How do we stop that? We build a case. We show you're the established parent. That Nate's life is stable with you. We show Porter's absence for 8 years demonstrates a lack of commitment. Will that be enough? It depends on the judge, and on whether Porter can prove paternity. Arthur folded his hands on the table. We'll fight for primary custody, and we'll make sure Nate's voice is heard. At his age, the court will consider his preferences. I nodded slowly. What do I need to do? Don't engage with Porter directly. Document everything. We file a motion to block any unsupervised contact. Then we prepare for a custody evaluation. How long will this take? Months. Custody cases move slowly. I closed my eyes. All right, let's do it. Arthur stood and extended his hand. I'll start the paperwork today. Keep Nate close. I left the office and sat in my car for a long time. The sun was setting. I thought about Nate, about how I was going to protect him. I started the engine and drove home. Nate was waiting for me on the front porch. He ran to the car as I pulled into the driveway. Dad, guess what? We built a tree house. I forced a smile. That's great, buddy. He climbed into the house ahead of me, talking nonstop about the treehouse and the snacks and the movie they watched. I let him talk. I let his excitement fill the silence. Because soon, that innocence would be gone. The DNA test was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Arthur had arranged it through the court. A neutral lab. Both Porter and Nate would be tested. Results would take 10 days. I did not tell Nate why we were going. I told him it was a routine checkup. He believed me. The lab was sterile and quiet. A technician swabbed the inside of Nate's cheek and sealed the sample. The whole process took less than 5 minutes. Nate asked if he could have a sticker on the way out. They gave him 2. Porter was scheduled for a separate appointment. I did not see him. Arthur filed the necessary motions. A temporary order blocking Porter from unsupervised contact with Nate, a formal request for custody evaluation, a notice that I intended to contest any claim for parental rights. Porter filed his own paperwork, a petition for paternity, a request for visitation rights, a motion for shared custody once paternity was confirmed. It was all moving faster than I expected. I kept Nate's routine as normal as possible: school, homework, dinner, bedtime stories. He asked why we had not gone to the gym on Saturday. I told him we were taking a break. The school contacted me a week later. Helen Moore, the school administrator, asked me to come in for a meeting. Her office was small and cluttered with binders and memos. She gestured to a chair and closed the door. Mr. Varon, she said, I wanted to talk to you about Porter Findler. What about him? He's informed us of the paternity claim. He's also requested continued access to the gym for his coaching program. I leaned forward. And? The district has decided to allow it. His background check is clean. He has all the necessary clearances. He's trying to take my son, I said. Helen's expression softened. I understand this is difficult, but from the school's perspective, he hasn't violated any policies. The court hasn't ruled yet. I know, but I wanted you to be aware that Porter will still be on campus. I stood up. Fine, but if he tries to approach Nate, I want to know immediately. Of course. I left the office. My hands were clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. Porter was still there, still at the school, still in Nate's world. I went to a different gym. I needed to move. To release the tension, I spent an hour working out. The physical pain helped distract from everything else. When I got home, Nate was watching cartoons. He looked up and smiled. Hey, Dad. I made dinner, chicken and rice. I ate mechanically. Nate chattered about school, about a science project, about a kid who brought a snake for show and tell. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. Arthur called that night after Nate was asleep. Child Services wants to do a home visit, he said. It's standard procedure. They'll evaluate your living situation, interview you and Nate. When? Next week. Just be honest. They're looking for stability and safety. All right. Stay calm, Brent. Don't give them any reason to question your judgment. I hung up and sat in the dark living room. The home visit happened on a Thursday afternoon. Elliot Brooks was the evaluator, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a clipboard. He arrived at 3 and stayed for 2 hours. He walked through every room, checked the smoke detectors, looked in the fridge, asked about Nate's school performance and social life. Then he interviewed Nate, alone, in the living room while I waited in the kitchen. I could hear their voices, but not the words. When they finished, Elliot sent Nate upstairs. Then he sat down with me. Nate seems well adjusted, he said. He speaks highly of you. He feels safe here. Good. But he's also confused. He's picking up on the tension. I nodded. If this goes to trial, he'll need to testify. My stomach turned. He's 8. I know, but the court will want to hear from him. Elliot gathered his papers and stood. You're doing a good job, Mr. Varon. He left. I sat at the table for a long time. The results came back on a Tuesday. Arthur called me at noon. Paternity is confirmed, he said. Porter is Nate's biological father. I closed my eyes. I had expected it, but hearing it still felt like a strike to the chest. What now? Now we fight for primary custody. The hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from today. What are our chances? Good, but not guaranteed. A lot will depend on how Nate responds. I thanked him and hung up. Nate was not mine biologically, but he was still my son, and I was not going to let him go. I opened my laptop and started compiling everything I needed: photos, school records, medical records, testimonies. I worked late into the night, and when I finally went to bed, I did not sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and waited for morning. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Plain walls, rows of wooden benches, a judge's bench at the front. It looked more like a conference room than a place where lives were decided. Arthur sat beside me at the defendant's table. Porter sat across the aisle with his attorney. We did not look at each other. Nate was not in the room. He was waiting in a separate area with a court liaison. He would be called later if needed. The judge entered, an older woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Judge Olivia Crane. Arthur had told me she was fair but strict. She did not tolerate games. She reviewed the case file, then looked up at both tables. This is a petition for parental rights, she said. Mr. Findler is seeking shared custody of the minor child, Nate Varon. Mr. Varon is contesting. Both parties have submitted evidence. We'll begin with opening statements. Porter's attorney went first, a younger man, confident, well-dressed. He stood and addressed the judge. Your Honor, this case is about a biological father's right to know his child. Mr. Findler did not abandon Nate. He was asked to step aside by the child's mother, and he respected that request. But now, with Clara Varon deceased, Mr. Findler believes it is time for Nate to know his true parentage. He is not seeking to disrupt Nate's life. He is seeking to be a part of it. He sat down. Arthur stood. Your Honor, this case is about stability. Mr. Varon has been Nate's father for 8 years. He has provided a loving home. He has been present for every milestone. Mr. Findler, by contrast, has been absent. Not because he was asked to step aside, but because he chose not to engage. He made no effort to establish paternity. He made no effort to support the child financially or emotionally. And now, Only after the mother's passing, he seeks to insert himself into Nate's life. This is not about fatherhood. This is about biology. And biology alone does not make a parent. Arthur sat down. The judge made a note on her pad. "Mr. Findler," she said, "tell me about your relationship with Clara Varon." Porter stood. He looked calm, rehearsed. "We met at a gym where I worked. We were both going through difficult times. We connected. It was brief, a few months. She got pregnant. She told me. Then she got her diagnosis, and she decided to stay with her husband. She asked me not to interfere. I respected that." "And you had no contact with her after that?" "No, Your Honor. She made it clear she did not want me involved." "Did you attempt to verify paternity at that time?" "No." "Why not?" Porter hesitated. "Because I trusted her, and because I did not want to cause her more pain." The judge looked at him for a long moment. "You say you respected her wishes, but now you're disregarding them. Why?" "Because things have changed. Clara is gone. Nate deserves to know his biological father, and I deserve the chance to be that for him." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Varon, what is your relationship with Nate?" I stood. My voice was steady. "He's my son. I've raised him since birth. I've been there for every moment. I fed him. I taught him. I comforted him when his mother passed. He calls me Dad, and I've never given him any reason to doubt that." "Were you aware of Clara's relationship with Mr. Findler?" "No." "Did Clara ever suggest that Nate was not your biological child?" "No." The judge made another note. "And how has Nate responded to this situation?" "He's confused, scared. He doesn't understand why a stranger is claiming to be his father." Porter's attorney stood. "Objection. Mr. Findler is not a stranger. He's Nate's biological father." "Sustained," the judge said. "Rephrase, Mr. Varon." I took a breath. "Nate doesn't know Porter. He's only seen him at the school and the gym. He's afraid of him." "Why?" "Because Porter approached him without my knowledge. Because he's been inserting himself into Nate's life without permission." Porter's attorney stood again. "Your Honor, Mr. Findler has not violated any court orders. He's been at the school in his capacity as a volunteer coach. Any contact with Nate has been incidental." The judge held up a hand. "I'll decide what's incidental. Sit down." The attorney sat. The judge looked at both of us. "I want to hear from Nate. Bring him in." A court liaison left the room. A few minutes later, she returned with Nate. He looked small in the formal setting. His eyes found mine immediately. I gave him a nod. He walked to the chair beside the judge's bench and sat down. The judge leaned forward slightly. Her voice softened. "Hi, Nate. My name is Judge Crane. Do you know why you're here?" Nate nodded. "Because of the man." "What man?" "The man from the gym. He says he's my dad." "And what do you think about that?" Nate looked at me, then back at the judge. "My dad is over there." The judge followed his gaze. "You mean Mr. Varon?" "Yes." "Do you know Mr. Findler?" "I've seen him, at school and at the gym." "Has he ever talked to you?" "No." "Do you want to know him?" Nate hesitated. His voice was small. "I don't know." The judge made a note. "Do you feel safe at home with Mr. Varon?" "Yes." "Does he take good care of you?" "Yes." "Is there anything you'd like to tell me, anything you're worried about?" Nate looked down at his hands. "I don't want to leave my dad." The judge's expression softened further. "Thank you, Nate. You can go back now." The liaison took Nate out of the room. The silence that followed felt heavy. The judge reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up. "I've heard enough. Here's my ruling." Everyone leaned forward. "Mr. Findler, you are Nate's biological father. That is a fact. But biology does not grant you the right to disrupt a child's life. You had 8 years to establish paternity. You had 8 years to seek a relationship with Nate. You chose not to. Whether that was out of respect for Clara's wishes or your own convenience, the result is the same. Nate does not know you, he does not trust you, and he has made it clear he does not want to leave the only father he's ever known." Porter's face tightened. "Mr. Varon has demonstrated consistent, loving care. He has provided stability, he has been present, and most importantly, Nate feels safe with him. I am not going to remove a child from a stable home based solely on biology." She looked at Porter. "Your petition for shared custody is denied. You will not be granted parental rights at this time. However, if you wish to pursue supervised visitation in the future, you may file a separate motion. But understand this. Nate's well-being comes first. Always." She banged her gavel once. "This hearing is concluded." Porter stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor with a sharp screech that echoed through the courtroom. His attorney put a hand on his arm, whispering something urgent, but Porter pulled away with an aggressive motion. He looked at me across the aisle. His expression was no longer calm, no longer measured. The mask had cracked, revealing something raw beneath. Anger, humiliation, desperation. "This isn't over," he said. His voice was low but carried across the silent room. Arthur stood beside me. "Mr. Findler, the judge has made her ruling." "I don't care," Porter said. He took a step toward our table. "He's my son, my DNA. That's a fact. You can't just erase me." The bailiff moved forward, hand resting on his belt. "Sir, you need to leave." Porter ignored him. His eyes stayed locked on mine. "You think you won? You think a piece of paper changes what's true? He's mine. He'll always be mine." I stood slowly. Arthur put a hand on my shoulder, but I shrugged it off gently. I looked at Porter, really looked at him. This man who claimed biology gave him rights. This man who had been absent for 8 years. This man who thought showing up now meant something. "No," I said quietly. "He's not." Porter's jaw clenched. "The DNA says otherwise." "The DNA says you contributed genetics. That's all. I'm the one who walked the floor with him at 3 a.m. when he had colic. I'm the one who taught him to read. I'm the one who held him when he cried for his mother. Where were you? Clara asked me to stay away. And you did, because it was easier. Because you didn't want the responsibility. Now you show up and expect what? Gratitude? Access? You want to be a father? You should have started 8 years ago." Porter's hands curled into fists. I respected her wishes. "You respected your convenience." The bailiff stepped between us. "Gentlemen, this conversation is over. Mr. Findler, you need to leave now." Porter stared at me for another long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. His attorney scrambled to gather his papers and follow. At the doorway, Porter stopped. He looked back one last time. "You can't keep him from me forever," he said. "I don't need to," I replied. "The court already did." Porter left. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud. I stood there, breathing, feeling the tension drain from my shoulders. Arthur squeezed my arm. "That went better than expected," he said. "It's not over," I said. "The ruling is final. He has no grounds for appeal unless he can show a significant change in circumstances, which he can't." I nodded, but something still felt unfinished. Porter's words echoed in my mind. "This isn't over." I left the courtroom and found Nate waiting in the hallway with the liaison. He jumped up when he saw me. "Can we go home now?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "We can go home." We walked out of the building together. The afternoon sun was bright. The air was cool. I took Nate's hand and we crossed the parking lot to my car. As I buckled him in, he looked up at me. "Dad? Yeah? Is that man going to come back?" I crouched down so we were eye level. "No, buddy, he's not. Promise." I hesitated. I wanted to promise. I wanted to tell him everything would be fine, but I also wanted to be honest. "The judge said he's not allowed to bother us, and I'm going to make sure he doesn't." Nate nodded slowly. "Okay." I closed his door and walked around to the driver's side. As I reached for the handle, I noticed a piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. I pulled it out. It was folded once. I opened it. The message was handwritten. Block letters, angry strokes. "You stole my son. You'll pay for this." I stared at the note. My first instinct was to crumple it and throw it away, to protect Nate from seeing it. But Arthur's voice echoed in my mind. "Document everything." I folded the note carefully and slid it into my jacket pocket. Then I got in the car and started the engine. Nate was quiet on the drive home. He stared out the window, watching the world pass by. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror every few seconds, checking his expression. He looked tired, but calm. We pulled into the driveway 20 minutes later. I parked in the garage and shut off the engine. "How about pizza for dinner?" I asked. Nate's face lit up. "Can we get the one with extra cheese?" "Absolutely." We went inside. I ordered the pizza while Nate went upstairs to change out of his dress clothes. I heard his door close, followed by the sound of drawers opening and closing. I pulled out my phone and called Arthur. "It's Brent," I said when he answered. "Porter left a note on my car." "What did it say?" I read it to him. Arthur was silent for a moment. Threatening language. "That's good for us. Photograph it and send it to me. I'll file it with the court. If he tries anything else, we can get a restraining order." "Should I call the police?" "Not yet. It's a threat, but it's vague. The police might take a report, but they won't do much. Keep the note. Document any other contact. If he approaches you or Nate directly, call immediately." "All right." I hung up and took a photo of the note. Then I slid it into a plastic bag and put it in my desk drawer with the rest of the evidence. The pizza arrived 30 minutes later. Nate and I ate at the kitchen table. He told me about a book he was reading at school, something about a kid who discovers a magic library. I listened and asked questions and tried to act normal, but my mind kept drifting back to the note, to Porter's face in the courtroom, to the way he had said, "This isn't over." After dinner, Nate asked if he could watch a movie. I said yes. He picked an animated film about talking animals. I sat beside him on the couch, half watching, half thinking. At 8:30, I sent him upstairs to brush his teeth and get ready for bed. I followed a few minutes later and found him already under the covers. "Dad?" he said as I sat on the edge of his bed. "Yeah? Are you okay?" I smiled. "I'm fine, buddy. Why?" "You seem worried." I reached out and ruffled his hair. "I'm just tired. It's been a long day." "But we won, right? That's what the lawyer said." "Yeah, we won." He smiled and closed his eyes. "Good." I sat there for a while, watching him drift off to sleep. His breathing slowed, his face relaxed. He looked so peaceful, so safe. I would do anything to keep him that way. I went downstairs and locked all the doors, checked all the windows. Then I poured myself a glass of water and stood at the kitchen sink, staring out at the dark backyard. Porter's words played on a loop in my mind. "You stole my son." I hadn't stolen anyone. Nate was mine. He had always been mine. Biology didn't change that. A court ruling didn't change that. Nothing changed that. But Porter didn't see it that way. And men like Porter didn't let go easily. I went to bed but didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle. Every creak made me tense. Every sound made me wonder if Porter was outside, if he was watching, if he was planning something. At 2 a.m, I got up and checked on Nate. He was still asleep, curled on his side, one arm hanging off the bed. I pulled the blanket up over him and closed the door quietly. Then I went back to my room and stared at the ceiling until dawn. 3 days passed. No contact from Porter, no notes, no phone calls, nothing. I started to relax. Maybe Arthur was right. Maybe the court ruling was enough. Maybe Porter had accepted defeat and moved on. On the 4th day, I got a call from the school. It was Helen Moore, the administrator. Her voice was tight, strained. "Mr. Varon, I need you to come to the school immediately." My chest tightened. "What happened?" "It's about Nate. He's fine, but there's been an incident. Please come right away." I was in the car in less than a minute. I drove faster than I should have, running a yellow light, weaving through traffic. The school was 15 minutes away. I made it in 10. I parked haphazardly in the visitor lot and ran to the main entrance. The receptionist saw me coming and buzzed me in without asking for ID. "He's in the office," she said, pointing down the hall. I found Helen's office with the door open. Nate sat in a chair against the wall, looking small and scared. Helen stood beside her desk, arms crossed, and standing near the window was a police officer. "What's going on?" I asked, moving straight to Nate. I crouched in front of him. "Are you okay?" He nodded, but his eyes were red. He'd been crying. I looked at Helen. "What happened?" She exchanged a glance with the officer before speaking. "Mr. Findler showed up at the school this morning. He tried to check Nate out of class." A chill ran through me. "What?" "He went to the front office and told the receptionist he was Nate's father. He asked to take him out of school early. The receptionist, thankfully, followed protocol and asked for ID and proof of custody. When Mr. Findler couldn't provide anything, she called me." I stood up slowly. "Where is he now?" "He left before I got there," Helen said. "But we have him on security footage. I called the police immediately." The officer stepped forward. He was young, maybe late 20s. "I'm Officer Brennan. I've reviewed the footage. Mr. Findler entered the building at 9:45 this morning. He approached the front desk and requested to check out Nate Varon. When asked for documentation, he became agitated. He left at 9:52. "Did he touch my son?" I asked. "Did he try to go to his classroom?" "No," Helen said quickly. "He never got past the front office. We immediately went to Nate's classroom and brought him here. We've kept him safe." I looked down at Nate. He was staring at his hands, picking at a loose thread on his shirt. "Did you see the man?" I asked him gently. He shook his head. "No. Mrs. Moore came and got me during reading time. She said you were coming." I pulled out my phone and called Arthur. He answered on the first ring. "Porter tried to take Nate from school," I said without preamble. "What?" I explained what happened. Arthur listened without interrupting. "This is exactly what we need," he said when I finished. "File a police report. Get copies of the security footage. I'll file for an emergency restraining order this afternoon. Porter just violated the spirit of the court's ruling. He's done." I thanked him and hung up. I turned to Officer Brennan. "I want to file a report." "Already started," he said. "I'll need a statement from you, and I'll need copies of the court documents showing custody. I have them in my car." "Good. I'll also need to speak with the school staff who interacted with Mr. Findler." Helen nodded. "I'll get you everything you need." I spent the next hour giving my statement. I showed Officer Brennan the court ruling, the note Porter had left on my car, the timeline of events. He took photos of everything. When we finished, he closed his notebook. "Mr. Varon, I'm going to be honest with you. This is harassment at minimum, attempted parental interference at worst. Given the court ruling and his behavior today, I'm going to recommend charges. The district attorney will decide whether to pursue them." "What does that mean for my son?" "It means Mr. Findler will be formally warned to stay away. If he doesn't, he'll face arrest. In the meantime, you should consider additional security measures. Cameras at home, alerting neighbors, changing your routine." I nodded. I'd already been thinking the same thing. Officer Brennan left. Helen walked me and Nate to the door. "I'm so sorry this happened," she said. "We've updated our security protocols. Mr. Findler's photo has been distributed to all staff. If he comes anywhere near this building again, we'll call the police immediately." "Thank you," I said. I took Nate's hand and walked him to the car. He climbed into the back seat without a word. I got behind the wheel and just sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to control my breathing. "Dad?" Nate's voice was small. "Is the man going to take me?" I turned to look at him. "No, absolutely not." But he tried. And he failed. And now the police know. And he's not allowed to come near you, ever. "What if he doesn't listen?" I chose my words carefully. "Then the police will stop him. And I'll be with you every step of the way. You're safe, Nate, I promise." He nodded, but I could see the fear still lingering in his eyes. I drove us home. Instead of going inside, I drove to a hardware store first. I bought 2 security cameras, motion sensor lights, new locks for the front and back doors. Nate helped me install them. When we got home, he held the drill while I mounted the cameras. He tested the motion lights by running back and forth in the driveway until they flickered on and off. By the time we finished, it was dark. I made grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner. Nate ate in silence. His earlier enthusiasm faded. After dinner, I sat him down on the couch. "Nate, I need you to understand something," I said. "That man, Porter, he's confused. He thinks he has a right to you because of biology. But the judge said no. The law said no. And now the police have said no. He's not allowed to come near us." "But he did," Nate said quietly. "He came to my school. And now there are consequences for that. He's going to be arrested if he tries again." "What if he doesn't care about consequences?" The question hit harder than I expected, because he was right. What if Porter didn't care? "Then I'll protect you," I said, "no matter what." Nate looked at me for a long moment. Then he leaned against my side, and I put my arm around him. We sat there in silence until he fell asleep. I carried him upstairs and tucked him into bed. Then I went back downstairs and checked every door, every window, every lock. The new cameras were recording. The motion lights were armed. The doors were secure. But I still didn't feel safe. I sat in the dark living room with my phone in my hand, waiting. For what? I wasn't sure. A sound, a shadow, a sign that Porter was coming back. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You can't hide him forever." I stared at the screen. My jaw clenched. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Arthur and Officer Brennan. Then I blocked the number and set the phone down. Porter wasn't going to stop. I'd known that from the beginning. Men like him didn't accept defeat. They escalated, and I needed to be ready. The restraining order was issued the next morning. Arthur called to tell me the news. "It's a temporary order," he explained. "Good for 14 days. Then there'll be a hearing to make it permanent. But effective immediately, Porter is not allowed within 500 feet of you, Nate, your home, or Nate's school." "What about the gym?" I asked. "The order specifies any location where Nate is present. If Nate goes to the gym, Porter has to leave. If he doesn't, he'll be arrested." "Good." "There's more." The district attorney reviewed the case. "They're charging Porter with attempted custodial interference and criminal harassment. He'll be arraigned next week." I felt something loosen in my chest. So it's over. Arthur hesitated. "Legally, we've done everything we can. But Brent, I need you to be careful. Men who feel cornered can be unpredictable. Keep your guard up. I will. I hung up and went to check on Nate. He was in his room, playing with toy cars on the floor. He looked up when I entered. Hey, Dad. Hey, buddy, want to go get some ice cream? His face brightened. Really? Really, let's get out of the house for a while. We drove to a local ice cream shop. Nate ordered chocolate chip. I got vanilla. We sat at a small table by the window, and for a few minutes, everything felt normal. Dad? Nate said between bites. Yeah? Are things going to be okay now? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to promise him that everything was fixed, but I'd learned that false promises only made things worse when they fell apart. Things are better, I said. The man isn't allowed to come near us anymore, and if he tries, he'll go to prison. So yeah, I think things are going to be okay. Nate nodded and went back to his ice cream. We stayed for another 20 minutes. Then we drove home. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something odd. The front door was slightly ajar. I shut off the engine. Nate, stay in the car. Why? Just stay here. Lock the doors. I'll be right back. I got out and approached the house slowly. The door wasn't broken. The frame was intact, but it was definitely open. I pushed it wider with my foot and stepped inside. The living room looked normal. Nothing overturned, nothing missing. I moved through the house, checking each room, kitchen, office, bathroom. Everything seemed fine. Then I went upstairs. Nate's room was untouched. But when I opened the door to my bedroom, I froze. The room had been searched, drawers pulled open, closet doors ajar, papers scattered across the floor, and on the bed, written in black marker across the white comforter, were 2 words. He's mine. I stood there, staring at the message, my heart pounding. Porter had been in my house, in my bedroom. He'd gone through my things. I pulled out my phone and called 911. I need to report a break-in, I said when the operator answered. I gave my address and explained what I'd found. Are you inside the residence now, sir? Yes. Is the intruder still present? No, I don't think so. Please exit the residence and wait outside. Officers are on their way. I went back downstairs and outside. Nate was still in the car, watching me through the windshield. I gave him a thumbs up and leaned against the hood, waiting. 2 patrol cars arrived within 5 minutes. I explained what had happened. They searched the house thoroughly. No one was inside. No signs of forced entry at any doors or windows. Looks like he had a key, one of the officers said. Or he picked the lock. Either way, he knew what he was doing. They took photos of the message on the bed. They dusted for fingerprints. They took my statement. We'll file this with the existing harassment case, the officer said. Given the restraining order, this is a direct violation. Mr. Findler will be arrested as soon as we locate him. They left. I stood in the driveway, staring at my house. My sanctuary, the place where Nate was supposed to feel safe, and Porter had violated it. I went back to the car and got Nate out. We're staying at a hotel tonight, I said. Why? Because the house needs some repairs. It'll be an adventure. I packed a bag for both of us. Clothes, toiletries, Nate's favorite stuffed animal. Then we drove to a hotel on the other side of town. I booked a room on the 3rd floor, interior access, security cameras in the hallways. I checked the locks 3 times before letting Nate settle in. He watched TV while I sat by the window, looking out at the parking lot, watching for Porter's car, watching for any sign of danger. At 9 o'clock, Officer Brennan called. We found him, he said. He was at his apartment. Took him into custody without incident. He's being held overnight. Arraignment is tomorrow morning. What happens then? Judge will review the charges. Given the restraining order violation and the break-in, I'd expect bail to be denied. But it's up to the judge. Thank you. I hung up and let out a long breath. Porter was in custody. He couldn't hurt us tonight. I turned to Nate. Hey, buddy. Everything's okay. The police caught the bad guy. Is he going to prison? Probably. For a while, at least. Nate nodded, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing at the door. I sat beside him on the bed. You know I'll always protect you, right? I know. No matter what happens, you're my son, and nobody can change that. He looked up at me. Even though I'm not really yours? The question pierced through me. What do you mean? The man said, he said he's my real dad, because of DNA. I took Nate's hands in mine. Listen to me. Biology doesn't make someone a father. Being there does. Loving someone does. I've been your dad since the day you were born. I changed your diapers. I taught you to walk. I stayed up with you when you were sick. I read you stories every night. That's what makes me your real dad. Not DNA, not anything else." Tears welled in Nate's eyes. "I don't want him to be my dad. I want you. And I'm not going anywhere. Ever." He threw his arms around me, and I held him tight. Eventually, he fell asleep. I tucked him in and sat in the chair by the window, watching the parking lot until dawn. The arraignment happened the next morning. Arthur called me with the results. "Bail denied," he said. Judge cited the restraining order violation, the break-in, and the ongoing harassment. Porter's being held pending trial. "When's the trial?" 6 weeks. Maybe sooner if the DA pushes for it. But Brent, this is good. He's off the streets. He can't touch you or Nate." I thanked Arthur and hung up. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I took Nate back to the house that afternoon. I'd hired a locksmith to change all the locks. The message on the bed had been scrubbed clean. The room looked normal again. Life slowly returned to normal. School, homework, dinner, bedtime. But I stayed vigilant. I checked the cameras every night. I walked the perimeter of the house before bed. Weeks passed. The trial date was set. Arthur prepared me for what to expect. Testimony, cross-examination, evidence presentation. "The DA is confident," Arthur said. "Porter's actions speak for themselves. The note, the text, the break-in, it's an open and shut case." The day of the trial arrived. I arranged for Nate to stay with a neighbor. I sat in the courtroom and watched as the prosecutor laid out the case. They showed the security footage from the school. They presented the note from my car, the text message, photos of the break-in. Porter sat at the defense table, expressionless. His attorney tried to argue that Porter's actions were driven by grief and confusion over his parental rights, that he'd acted out of desperation, not malice. The jury wasn't convinced. They deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge looked at Porter with cold eyes. "Mr. Findler, you had every opportunity to respect the court's decision. Instead, you chose harassment, threats, and criminal behavior. You violated a restraining order. You broke into a private residence. You terrorized a child." Porter stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "I'm sentencing you to 3 years in state prison. No possibility of parole. The restraining order will remain in effect indefinitely. If you ever attempt to contact Mr. Varan or his son again, you will face additional charges and additional time." The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom. Porter stood as the bailiffs approached. For a moment, his eyes found mine across the room. There was no apology there, no regret, just empty defiance. Then they led him away in handcuffs, and he was gone. I walked out of the courthouse into bright afternoon sunlight. The air felt cleaner somehow, lighter. I drove home and found Nate in the backyard, kicking a soccer ball against the fence. He stopped when he saw me. "How did it go?" he asked. "It's over," I said. "He's going to prison for a long time." Nate's whole body relaxed. "Really?" "Really." He ran to me and wrapped his arms around my waist. I held him tight, feeling the weight of months finally lift. "You're safe now," I said. "We both are." He looked up at me with clear eyes. No more fear, no more questions, just trust. "I know," he said.